Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode, the new episode, this week's episode, fuck my life, of Muzzle Punch. So, as promised, we're going to dig into, in this episode, the topic that I started with Carol, with K-Rock, Race in America. I was lucky enough to have my cousin, Jess, and her daughter, who's my second cousin, Mel, come out, and they were willing to sit down and have a conversation with me about it. I'm not going to spoil it. It was awesome. I'm just so fucking excited about this conversation. I was excited to have it. I was excited to sit down. I've been looking forward to this interview all week, and it did not disappoint for me. It was awesome. It's such a good conversation. It's such an important conversation that even once we got rolling on it, we just started. This episode's shorter than the last, shorter than what you guys are used to at this point. So this is just under 2 hours. But we are going to sit down again sometime in the not too distant future, and we're just going to put aside a whole bunch of time and just really kind of roll our sleeves up and dig into it where we left off and where we started, when we started kind of getting into the good part of it. And then we have as it turns out, we have an assignment. Me, Jess, and Mel, we all agreed to be part of a reading group to read a book, and we're going to add to it and come back together in the spring and talk about it. So hope you enjoy this episode. It was an awesome conversation. I'm so stoked about it. With that, hey everybody, here's this episode of Muzzle Punch. Enjoy.
Break it down like this.
No problem. All units stand by. 7-0 receiving a 34 with a weapon. 1549 East 18th Street. 1549 East 28th.
And we're live. Okay. Thank you both for coming, Jess and Mel. First thing I want you to do, Jess, if you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then that'll be a great lead in because seeing how Mel is from you, it'll be good for then Mel can set up how she's Mel.
All right, that sounds good. But, it's weird because I was saying earlier that I took a video of us watching some seals, and I could not tell because we had the camera pointed to the seals. No idea who was Mel and who was me when I was listening to it afterwards. I'm like, I don't know who's saying what. It's one of us. So
I can tell.
You can tell, but you're looking at us though. If you listen, then again, also I'm hearing myself through bone. So it is possible that other people, anyway, that's not important. So I am your cousin.
Yes.
Our mothers are first cousins. And
yes.
I am getting older. I'm 49. I feel 18. My father is black and my mother is white, and that is important to me. I say that, I lead with that because I did not know that until I was about 18. I knew I have a birth certificate that says my name is Jessica Del Rio, which was the name that my grandmother made up for me so that I would think my father was Spanish from Spain and a dancer on Broadway. That was my narrative. That was a narrative that I was given. And I didn't find out until I was about 18 that, although I kind of suspected that my father was black, and met him when I was about 21.
Okay.
So
how did that go?
That went really well, actually.
Was he local?
He was born in Norwalk, Connecticut.
Okay.
He lived in Springfield and then moved to Boston probably around the time I was born, I should think. Moved to Cambridge. So when I met him, he was still living in Cambridge. He's an artist and kind of jack of all trades.
He lives in Cambridge.
He lived in Cambridge, exactly. That's exactly right. And so we had a really good relationship right from the get-go. He didn't live long after I met him. I think maybe about 5 or 6 years. And he got cancer and passed away. But I got to know him, and I got to know my cousins on my other side of the family, on his side of the family. Although we're not close, we didn't stay close, but we're Facebook friends, and we know them, and I know them. So that's who I am. And what else about me? I work from home. I am.
Well, Yeah, what's your profession?
I close caption news programs for deaf people. So I'm a court stenographer trained, but I have to sit and listen to, can we swear? Are we allowed to swear?
Fuck yeah.
Okay, good. I have to listen to shit all day long. I'm currently captioning CNN 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. And it's painful. I get off the air and I'm in the worst mood ever for about an hour and a half after that, I think, at least. And, you know, sometimes we were just saying today, I'll go down. Now my boyfriend lives with me, but at the time he lived below me in an apartment below me. And I'd get off the air and I'd go down and visit him and he'd have music playing and I'd just be like, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. You know, I just couldn't handle it. Could not handle hearing another thing in my head.
Imagine how you'd feel if you had to close caption Sean Hannity.
So here's the thing. Every
So about that.
Funny story.
Right? Every 3 months we change schedules, and they send out. There's about 130 stenographers, and they send out a block of schedules, and you get to choose it in order of preference, 1 to 50, what you would like. And the first thing I do is go through the spreadsheet, and anything that has Fox News on it, I take it off. And if I have to add it as like my 50th choice, I'll add it as my 50th choice. But I will do almost anything. I'll do MMA, I'll do Formula One, I'll do horse racing before I'll do Sean Hannity.
Huh.
Or any Fox News.
So you're just not a fan of the fair and balanced,
I
huh?
am not a fan of the fair and balanced. So yeah, I won't do it.
Huh.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you're Mel's mom.
I am Mel's mom. That is probably what I'm most proud of, actually.
Aw.
I was just saying today that, you know, I think probably my best job that I've ever done in my life is be a mother. And, you know, I regret not having more than one child, but I also am really, really proud of the job I did with the child that I did have. And
Oh, if you're only going to have one, you had a hell of a
you
child.
might as well do it right.
You did.
You know,
you had a
and
hell of a
She had no distractions. You know,
and
so
no
it was
distractions.
all
I wouldn't
just
allow. I didn't
perfectly
date men.
tailored
Right. I
to
did.
me.
That's right. I did. I had no. There were no other children. Wouldn't date. I refused to date. So
I
know,
wouldn't have had it any other way because I got all the attention.
This is
but
true. Oh, she asked for a little sister once. You did. You asked for a little sister once.
I have no memory of that.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'd have eaten her. Now, Mel,
Yeah.
your story,
Okay.
which is
so-
interesting in and of itself.
Yeah, I think so. It's nowhere near as interesting or dramatic as my mom's story, but I guess that's a good thing.
Well, I never lied to you about anything.
Right. So I am. Let's see. I'll start with today. I'm 28 years old, and I'm married. I live in Providence, Rhode Island, and I just started a PhD program in music at Brown University. And I'm a trained musician. I'm a trained vocalist. I've been studying now for like 10 years formally in institutions as a musician and a musicologist, which is
What an
crazy
interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I just thought about that today. I was like, oh my God, like I started undergrad in 2006 and it's 2016 and I'm still in school.
That's okay.
I love it. I really like academia and I like to talk and let's see, what else can I tell you about myself? I mean, I think so I'm studying ethnomusicology, but I like to perform and I like to sing.
How long did you live in Brazil?
I lived in Brazil. Well, I visited Brazil a lot, but I lived there for an academic year.
Yeah.
And the first time I went to Brazil, I was in undergrad. It was for a brief summer project, and I went for 3 months. And then the second time I went back was for that. It was under a Fulbright scholarship, and I went back for 9 months. But specifically to spend the time in with the University of São Paulo with the professors during the year and working with the students and the professors on music.
Is your husband Brazilian?
He is Brazilian.
Okay.
She's more Brazilian than her husband.
Yeah, so the joke in the family is, in both sides of the family, is that I'm more Brazilian than my husband.
Who, can I just add, his name is Jefferson.
Yeah.
Oh.
And
That's not Brazilian at all.
so it's a common Brazilian name, surprisingly, even though it's not a Brazilian
Sounding name, yeah.
but he is from the south of Brazil, Dutch and Austrian heritage. And so the joke is that, he looks like an American and I look like a Brazilian.
Yeah, he's got to look almost as white as the driven snow. Yeah.
We were at the beach earlier this year, all of us, me, my mom, and my mom's boyfriend, and I was just talking with my mom, and I was like, oh my God, Jeff is so white. So pale. Look at his skin. But yeah, so that's the joke. But we actually met in Somerville, Massachusetts. We were high school sweethearts. Before that, we knew each other in elementary school. So it's a sweet little story. And he was, as you can tell from what I'm telling you, he was raised in the U.S.
Yeah.
Even though he think relates to being Brazilian, but relates to being American just as much.
Sure. Yeah. Was he born in Brazil and raised here? How old was he when they immigrated?
He was 7.
7.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Does he have any trace of an accent whatsoever?
No.
How's his Portuguese?
It's good. It's very good. There's no accent, but he doesn't like to speak in Portuguese.
I like that you're like judging him like a Brazilian. You're like, it's good. It's not that accented. He could pass.
Oh no, I guess yeah, right. There's no accent. I know it's funny. I'm kind of being trying to give you a really laid out. Think about what I tell other Brazilians when they ask me. What's your husband sound like?
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Yeah, because living in Brazil is cool and interesting. I mean, that's time outside the country.
There's bugs. It's lots of bugs. This is what I'm just going to interrupt and say that. Like, she wants me to live there with her when she goes back. And then she told me that she was leaving for school one day and almost stepped on a monitor lizard the size of a puppy. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was larger than the size of a puppy.
Yeah.
It was really big, actually. It looked like a big alligator, and it was scary. But no, there were bugs, and there are lizards, and I was living in a place that's pretty developed. So even being in a kind of developed place, it's a tropical area.
Yeah.
It's tropical and subtropical, and it is what it is. You spill a drop of milk on the ground, and there's no turning around, pouring yourself your bowl of cereal, and then cleaning it up. You want to clean that up as soon as you spill it because lots of bugs can smell it and they come out and they'll...
Yeah.
And once she saw a capybara with no body that was eaten by a panther when she was in the countryside.
Yeah, mountain lion.
Mountain lion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a story for another time. Yeah.
I saw him. I had a close encounter with a mountain lion in Afghanistan.
Mm.
In Afghanistan.
I'm
sitting there staring at...
I didn't even realize that that's a stupid thing, but I didn't know that they would have mountain lions in Afghanistan.
Yeah. If you saw this thing, you would have thought it was a puma from here in the States. You would have thought it was a Florida panther.
Was it gorgeous, though? Was it beautiful? Or were you just like...
No, so I was... Okay, this is a sidebar, but we'll do it real quick because it's kind of funny. So I'm living at the time at what's called a strong point with my Afghans. It's me and another American, and we had about 30 or 40 Afghans that we were mentors to. We got retasked to go live with and work with a Canadian platoon. It was called a strong point. And all it really was a collection of about 7 compounds in an L shape. And we were guarding one side of a road that was being built from this static point. And the Canadians had big armored vehicles. I had a Humvee. And they had all these kind of optics. And then we were talking to them when we first got there. They're like, dude, about 3 or 4 different gunners who are on night watch saw something moving out in the vineyards, because this was in Panjwai district of Afghanistan where they have vineyards. Very different than the vineyards you're thinking about, because they're earth mound vineyards with it's a trench system. And they're like, something's moving and it looks like a cat, because they could see it on like a FLIR. They could see it with heat and night vision. But no one had gotten a good look at it. So we get into a firefight. And the next day we go out to see if there's anything out there, try and find out how they got in, do a battle damage assessment. As we're walking through these trenches, the vineyards, we come across a mountain lion.
Wow. Was it just sleeping?
Well, it had gotten we thought it was dead. It had gotten shot in this firefight.
Wow.
No one even knew it. I mean, firefights are crazy, but sure, it got shot through the hind legs. Right through its back hips. And we thought it was dead. So me and 3 other Canadians were all standing over looking at it.
Right.
Like this. Holy shit, there's a mountain line. One on each side, like north, south, east, and west. And it opens its eyes. And it goes, and we're like, holy shit. Now, we all have firearms.
Right.
But we're all facing each other.
Right. Circular firing.
So we backed up, and one of the Canadian kids just happened to put a couple rounds in and killed it instantly. But I was like, did that just fucking happen?
That's scary.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure as shit. A mountain lion in Afghanistan. And when they were talking about, like, there's a lion or something out there, maybe it escaped from the zoo or something like that, we're all like, whatever. Like, everyone who hadn't seen it was like, you guys are seeing shit. There's no way. Sure as shit. A fucking mountain lion in southern Afghanistan, Panjwai district of Kandahar. And we killed it in a fire. Well, we mortally wounded it in a firefight with the Taliban.
Right.
And then
or
we ended
the
up
Taliban did it.
and then we ended up putting it down the next morning.
Right.
So we did veterinary services on the combat patrol. The
So
craziest
the
thing.
question I actually have now is, did you pick up any Arabic when you were there?
Not in Afghanistan, because they don't speak Arabic in Afghanistan. They speak you have two different primary dialects. You have Dari, which is a subdialect of Farsi, which is a subdialect of Persian.
Right.
That's mostly spoken in northern and western Afghanistan. But in southern Afghanistan, southern and southeastern Afghanistan, which is mostly the border region, they speak Pashto.
Pashto, that's right.
And Pashto is only a spoken language. It's not written. And Pashto is primarily spoken by Pashtuns. So we would get a lot of Terps, and their Pashtun and Dari are like 2 totally different languages. So we would get Terps a lot of time from the north who didn't speak any Pashto, but they would learn it from the Afghans. Because Afghans, the one good thing we did with the Afghan National Army is we forced integration. So classically there's a lot of ethnical pecking order in Afghanistan based upon the dispersion, and depending on where you are regionally. And we just forced once Taliban was fallen, and we kind of forced integration of the different ethnicities into this idea of one Afghanistan. They would just start teaching each other Pashtun and Dari, because you didn't know if you're going to end up in the south or you're going to end up in the north.
Right. So
our Terps would just learn Pashtun from them, and our Terps were amazing. I mean, they spoke, they would speak probably 4 to 5 languages.
Right.
It was just they would learn. So they spoke English.
Right.
Spoke and wrote English. They spoke and wrote Dari. They could do Farsi. Excuse me. They could speak Punjab from Pakistan. And then they could also speak, and then they would pick up Pashtun. And they would pick up language at such an amazingly fast rate, but it was a survival tool. They had to.
I know somebody who actually is studying Indian languages, and he said, once you speak like 3, then you speak 10. Like that's the way it is.
That much similarity?
There's so much similarity eventually when you speak. If you speak 3 languages, you speak 10 languages.
Oh, wow.
So, and I would imagine that's like Latin languages are probably the same, like Melody speaks Portuguese and Spanish, and now is going to learn French.
And you learn Italian pretty quick.
Yeah.
If you wanted to.
Like, listening to Italian is almost, sometimes it's like it just takes, there's no cost to understand what's being said, which is strange. So, yeah, I can see how, and reading like French and reading Italian is certainly not difficult once you have read in a couple other languages.
Yeah, especially all those, because they're all romance. Yeah, they're all romance-based, so they follow pretty much the same rules.
Yeah.
And there's just been some changing of words and stuff like that, different meanings to words. They imply different things and stuff like that in the context.
Spelling, grammar is slightly different, but never,
Yeah, it's not.
completely. So.
It's not tragically different, like trying to read German, even though it's in them are English letters. Nah, it ain't English, dude.
You remember the song "Rock Me Amadeus"?
Yes.
When I first heard it, it was in German, but I thought it was English. But I just couldn't figure out why I couldn't understand what he was saying. I'm like, what? But because then he says "Rock Me Amadeus," so what's the rest of it? But no, I didn't realize it was in German actually.
Well, there was that. Did you ever hear that Gummy Berry song? The Gummy Bear song? No. It was like this funny little short that was on YouTube I used to love it. It was hysterical. But it's originally in German. And you can't understand it. And then it's gummy, gummy, gummy. It's hysterical. And it's so techno-ish. You're like, all right, yeah, it's totally Euro trash techno. Right. Yeah, okay. But yeah, when you're first listening to it, you're like, is that English? Yeah. Wait, that's English. No, it's not English. God damn it. But yeah, I picked up just a little bit of Pashtun. Very little bit. Like I know how to say what's up what's up, and then like not much. So like chicken paws and cheese in. And the way I remember it is chicken pox and cheese nits.
Yeah.
Like that's how I remembered it. And it was funny, my Terp taught me how to say this stuff, and it was just kind of in passing. And then thank you was I can't remember it right now. It's actually to me it's the kindest sounding thank you that I've ever heard. Which makes sense because Pashtun has the Pashtun culture has a honor code similar to the machismo that you find in a lot of the Latin cultures, except it's much deeper. It's called Pashtun Wali, and it's this whole code, social code, and how you treat guests, how you treat foreigners. I mean, it's really extensive, and it's all oral. So there's no written. So it's a really interesting and beautiful and very, very resistant to change culture. But I cannot remember how to say thank you. But anyways, yeah, my Terp used to crack up because he'd be like, "Hey, sir, ask him what's up." So I would ask people, and they would look at me, and they'd look at my Terp and be like, "He's Afghan?" And they're like, he'd look at him and be like, "He's not Afghan. You've never seen an Afghan built like him. There's no Afghans like him." And they're like, "You're Afghan." I was like, "I am not Afghan." You had a good accent. You had it, yes. Yeah, because I just parrot well. So he taught me how to say it, and I just listened, and honestly, I had a good ear for it and said it. I think
if there is no written language, like that is one of the things that the first state in Brazil that I ever heard of was Curitiba.
It's a city.
The first city in Brazil is Curitiba. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And then I could say it. And then I saw it written, and I'm like, boy, I'm glad I never saw that written, or I would never be able to pronounce it.
Yeah.
I can pronounce it right now.
Thank you is Tashakur.
Tashakur.
So pretty.
Yeah,
it's such a... And when you learn to say it, and you hear someone else say it, they're like, Tashakur. You're like, okay. That's what thank you should sound like.
Yeah.
It's very... There's a lot of just in the inflection. Just when you learn to say it and you hear it, there's a lot. The inflection. There's like true gratitude, and it's beautiful. And I've always loved it. Not a big fan of Arabic culture. It's a preference. I loved Afghanistan. I love the Persian influence of culture. I would love for things to normalize with Iran. And get a chance because, like, one of the things I just would love to do, bucket list, go to Tehran. I just want to go to Tehran. I want to spend time around Persian culture. I think Persian culture and heritage, unfortunately, has probably been the most tragic victim of the rise of Islam, fundamentalist Islam. Yeah. Me personally, I am in awe of the Persian history and the depth and the richness of it and the culture. And I mean, it was all about poetry and art,
right?
And beautiful music, you know. And it's part of their history. It's entrenched in them. It's deep in the people. And when I was in Iraq, we were in one of the border provinces. In my company, some of my soldiers, every now and then, a couple times, they went out to the border to check with the border patrol and stuff like that. And they would say that you could tell. Literally, you could tell where Iraq ended and Iran started. Because on the Iraq side, there was trash, it was dirty, but on the Iranian side, crystal clean. Crystal clear.
Interesting.
Yep, nothing blown around. It was clean, it was neat, it was orderly. And it's a sense of pride. I mean, it's an older culture. Right. The Arabic culture is 100 years removed, not even. It's like 4 generations removed from being camel. I mean, like literally like camel dealers,
right? And
being Bedouins,
right?
And they went from the 7th century to the 20th century in a matter of a couple of decades. And by the time those decades were done, it was the 21st century. So it's an accelerator. It's just such a crazy accelerator rate. So I think it's a cool part of the world. I really do. I find it interesting. I enjoyed. I found Kuwait to be an interesting place. Yeah, everywhere I traveled, I found Dubai to be interesting. I found the UAE to be interesting. I liked Iraq, parts of it. But I think for me, I'm just not the Arabic culture, which is mostly like a barter. It's just a different culture. And most Westerners, I think from anywhere, because it's not just Westerners, people have an inability to kind of understand. It's a real old world but foreign kind of culture that's based around bartering and tribalism in a way we don't quite fully understand. So it's easier to just discount it as being they're shady or they're shifty or they're heathens or they're savages, and it's not. It's really not. There's some really beautiful parts of it, in my opinion, that are really deeply connected to their historical and ancestral roots. And I think there's something that we could learn from that, but it'd be really hard. But on the other side of it, it also makes them very susceptible to fundamentalist radical Islam, which has really taken root there. And it's deeply entrenched in that region of the world. That's where its rise was. But I mean, that's where you get Judaism from. That's where you get the big three, right? They all came
from there.
right out of this little tiny corner of the world that's nothing but hard scrabbled dirt. And when you spend a lot of time there, you're like, oh, I get why people kept going. Once we all came out of Africa, they were like, oh, we fucked up. We got to go any other way but here, because we came from like lush grasslands and we done went and fucked up. So we either got to go north, west, or east. We got to keep pushing on. Right. And some people were like, no, we're good here. And we were like, have fun with that shit.
Yeah, you say.
Have fun with that shit. But yeah, I guess there's a little sidebar on the Middle East I didn't expect to take. I always, whenever people ask me that.
It's fascinating to me to hear, as a person who spends, so much of her day listening to the news and, hearing from soldiers, hearing from military people, but who are there, who are in, either who have left and are what's the word that I'm looking for, are policymakers, or who are just boots on the ground. And not a lot of reflection from people who have been there and have been home and, have spent a lot of time actually thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So it's actually interesting for me to hear it, as a person who I'm always hearing the policymakers and the.
You were on my email list when I was in Afghanistan.
I was.
Weren't you?
I read your blog or your emails faithfully.
Yeah. Yeah, I went into Afghanistan with a lot of. I went in wanting to. I was so excited to go there because it's just such an ancient place. I love old places. That's a historian in me. I mean, I want someday I'll go back to Japan because that's feeling wise. There's something mystical about Japan. You walk the countryside in Japan and it's just old.
I caption an actual show from Japan called NHK, which is their news agency. But I don't do it this block, but they used to have a show called Seasoning the Seasons, and they would go to different parts of Japan and talk about what made them beautiful, like lavender flowers on this countryside, and how they have this lavender festival, or then this other part of the country where they have a dance festival where people literally dance for 48 hours, and they make it seem very magical and beautiful. It's a great show. If you ever get a chance to look it up on YouTube, it's called Seasoning the Seasons.
Yeah,
lovely.
Yeah, I want to go back to Japan as a cultural sponge. I don't want to go as number one, I'm not a tourist. Like, if I ever came to meet you, if I ever get a chance to come visit you in Brazil, I'll be like, hey Mel, let's go to fucking Brazil. I don't know. That's the thing, right? I like to be amongst genuine people. Like, one of the things I hated about being stationed in Hawaii was the commercialism. Like, I liked hopping in the cab with a local cabbie. And just being like, hey, brother, take me home. Yeah. And we would just talk, And I'd like walking through the seedier parts, the less howly-friendly places, and just kind of getting to know the culture. I like the dirt and the grit of the world. So if I ever go back to Japan, I'd like to be able to just kind of like backpack through Japan, and maybe learn just enough Japanese. But there's everything's written in English there anyway, so you can kind of get by. But I would love to. But the land felt old. Mm-hmm. I've walked to the summit of Fuji through the ash. I mean, it's just, the place is just incredibly beautiful and old, and it feel like you can feel the struggle in the soil. Like, it was a very, the Edo era of Japan was a violent time. A lot of clan warfare and blood. You can just feel it. It's just part of that land, and it's a part of all of their culture. It's very homogeneous and isolated, but still also very beautiful. I don't know. There's just something about Japan that's always magical to me.
It's calling you.
Definitely is. So, all that being said, so did both of you listen to the episode with K-Rock?
I did.
I did not.
You did not.
Get a chance to.
Did you read the stuff I sent you?
Yes, I did.
You did?
I did.
Okay. So the whole reason, actually it was kind of serendipitous, is the episode I had with K-Rock, I originally wanted to have you on, Jess.
Yeah.
You were my first choice to sit down and have that conversation. And when I originally wanted to have it was when everything was a little bit more fresh. And I can't remember exactly which one of the unfortunately many shootings it was. But I think you were actually, you were in San Francisco.
In San Francisco.
You were in San Fran. So then I really kind of wanted to have that conversation. And luckily enough, I was like, oh, I'll sit down and talk with K-Rock. And it was really fun. It was wonderful. But then you posted that post about, what was it? The post was the New York Times op-ed piece, I think it was.
Was it the one about I'm not going to talk about racism with my white friends?
Yes. Yeah. And I was like, God, this is so fucking tragic. Like, I understood that. Like, when I read it, I was like, oh, I totally get it. But this is exactly why it's tragic. Like, this is why people need to have the conversation. Because people are just talking past each other.
Yeah.
I feel. Like, I hear people talking both sides, and I'm like, okay. Fuck, there it goes. It just went sideways. It just became completely unproductive. And then I remembered, and then as we set the date, and Jess is like, oh yeah, Mel will come too. I'm like, this is going to be fucking fantastic. and then it dawned on me, and I told you, I was like, holy shit. This is right on Columbus Day weekend, serendipitously, because you posted. Yeah.
You're totally right. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
And you remember
my
the
gosh.
picture of the statue you posted? with
Right.
the-
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
We had the big long conversation about that. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a conversation when they vandalized the Columbus Day thing. Yep. And I was like, holy cool.
Which I felt like was, pretty productive.
I did too.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
actually.
Yeah.
And it is hard to have those conversations. And I think a lot of times, I mean, I tend to have conversations, but then again, it depends on who you're talking with. Right?
Absolutely.
Because who's willing to listen and who's not willing to listen. And I tend to not, like the article that you put up, I tend to not talk to people who I just know it's going to go sideways, and then it's not going to be productive.
Right. I'll talk to somebody with an open mind anytime, even if that open mind is different than what I believe. I have no problem having that discussion. I have a problem coming to the discussion where we can't even find one point of agreement to move off of. That's when I'm like, you know what? You figure this one out on your own.
Yeah, see, I have such a problem. I am just so defiant in the face of invincible ignorance that I just want to pummel it.
That used to happen to me, and there are occasions. This is so. I can't believe I'm admitting this, but okay. I have a friend, my friend Jessie, who I was visiting in San Francisco, and she is biracial. Also, she is Chinese and white, and we used to gang up on people on Facebook with our knowledge, or with we're all so sarcastic and we're witty, and if somebody would post something that I disagreed with, I would say something, and then she would just come in, and then we just go back and forth until finally we'd have this poor person backed into a corner, which probably isn't the best for, respectful dialogue either. But
oh yeah, it is.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I like to. I do it all the time. I set all kinds of traps. Like I'll just let people go, and then I'll walk them back because I love to dissect. So I'll dissect your argument. Most people don't understand reason. They don't understand logic. They don't know how to develop a good argument. So I'll just start breaking it down, and then I'll bring them around to something. I'll get them agreeing to something. I'll be like, so you agree with this? And they're like, no. I'm going.
That's different.
People will tag me all the time on Facebook when they're in like things, and they want me to just drop in on a thread and shut it down.
Yes.
And I do it a lot. I'll just jump into a thread, and I'll just kind of go through, and then the thread will die, and I'll be like, damn it. But I'm like hoping someone's going to be like, all right, let's go. Right. And every now and then someone's like, oh, you're an interesting, we got a thinker in here. Let's go. And I'm like,
let's do it. Yeah.
Game on.
Yeah.
I better get my computer open because I can't do this on my phone.
Right. Exactly. And every now and then I'll actually, because Melody is an academic and I'm not, and I will send her a Facebook message, and I'll say, could you please get on this Facebook thread and just read it and, respond to Rachel or whatever, just try, because I want her input to either shut it down or to bring it back onto the rails if it's gone off the rails or whatever. But,
yeah. That's the other thing too. Like people have this, I don't know what it is, but people have people like to fancy themselves, one, intellectuals, and two, they like to think that they are sound in their reasoning and their beliefs. They don't want to come to the conclusion that it's mostly emotionally based. They haven't really thought it throughout. They're not the critical thinker that they fancy themselves to be. And then when you kind of take them to task in a structured manner, you're like, hey, listen, this is actually how you develop an argument. So now we're going to go down this road. They just are like, whatever. And then they start deflecting.
Right.
They'll deflect. They'll deflect and they'll try to go with things. You're like, hey, okay, that's interesting. But this is what I asked you. And you keep on bringing it back and they keep on trying to go. And then they're just like, bah, they walk off.
I try to narrow it down to one question. Like I'll do a paragraph and then they'll respond with these 5 paragraphs that mean nothing. And then I'll say, but what I asked you is, and just bring it down to that one paragraph, and then they'll go on with a couple more, and then I'll say, but what I asked you is, and I want that answer. That's all I'm looking for. Just give me the answer,
Yeah,
So
I love to do that too. Like you can see all the little tangents that are trying to go on, and you just kind of close those, and then you come back to the original and you go, but can you answer this? And they're like, that. And you're like, all right, whatever. But like Facebook is,
it's the worst. It brings out the worst and the best in people, I think.
It really does.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the internet is this wonderful tool that has connected people, but then it's created these echo chambers.
Right.
And it's created, oh my God, all people are is they're just finding more like-minded people.
Right.
And then people are like, holy shit, I didn't know there was people out there who were into fucking pony porn like I am. And then all of a sudden you're like, what the fuck? There's a sub.
Knee fetishes, right?
Or like, you know about bronies?
I know about bronies. Yes,
Have you watched the Netflix thing about bronies?
I've not watched the Netflix thing about bronies.
It's really
I know
interesting.
About bronies.
It's really interesting. And in some cases, it's kind of like sad. Like, come on, that kid.
Sad.
No, but I mean, like one of these kids in the thing, he's like from West Virginia, and he's a fucking sweet kid, and he's getting hammered,
right?
Like from other locals, and you're like, come on, stop. He's harmless,
right.
You know
What a brony, bronies.
I don't know about this.
They're men who like My Little Pony.
Well, it's a whole. No, it's not. Well, it's not. Yeah, I mean, it is mostly men, but it's like a whole movement of 20s, 30s, and 40-year-old men. I mean, they have conventions. They're like fucking Comic-Cons.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I should look that up.
And they cosplay.
Right.
They cosplay as My Little Ponies.
Right. Huh.
So like this, I mean, the whole like My Little Ponies and creators like that. They're like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like this huge resurgence. Right. All of the stuff that they sell, they didn't have to change their marketing scheme or anything like that. That's what attracted these guys to it. But they're like, oh, the message is so positive and it's all about love. And you're like,
this is breaking my heart.
Oh, no.
Like, who didn't hug you enough?
I know.
I mean, it's really like, you're kind of like, ooh, it is interesting and it's fascinating. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like harmless mental illness.
Sure.
Illness. Not to degrade it. And I'm not, but I mean, like, people want to bash on it and stuff. But then there's like, of course, like anything like that, there takes some really strange perverted turns, and you're like, oh,
like the furries.
Oh, yeah, furries, yeah.
Oh, poor Melody.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Stay at Brown. Stay at Brown.
So here's the thing, though. I'm gonna, I do know what furries are essentially the same thing. They're people who dress in big like costumes.
That's
of
what I
furry.
imagine.
Yeah, and they have conventions, and I think they have sex.
No, not think they do. Like that's a defining thing of furries. That's their fetish.
So meanwhile, she doesn't know about that. But when I lived in Salem, I didn't know what the shocker was.
Really?
And I had no idea at the time. And so we were walking through Salem at Halloween, and this guy, do you remember this? This guy was dressed as the shocker. I had no idea, so I was like, oh, look at the hand. And I was like, come on, Mom, let's go. I just didn't know.
Well, you know what the Sufi is?
I do not know the Sufi.
Dane Cook's super finger when one finger's not enough.
Oh.
So you'll see the Sufi too, and sometimes people mistaken the Sufi for the shocker. They're two different things, though. Yeah.
All right. No, I didn't.
Yeah. The Sufi's kind of. I mean, Dane Cook's not as popular as he once was, but yeah, the Sufi.
Right.
Yeah.
You knew it because you remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, I know all this stuff.
I actually just played his. I was telling Mel I played his waking up late routine for my boyfriend who frequently wakes up late, and he thought
really?
that was about the funniest thing he did. Like he just sat there laughing so hard. So, yeah, good guy, that guy.
Yeah, his whole vicious cycle That was one of the best comedy. That was one of the best like comedy routines ever. That was awesome. When they did it at the Boston Garden, the way they did it, where he was in the center.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
He talked about wanting to kick in the door and everything like that. It's one of the funniest things in the world that the guy's like freaking out. What the hell did you take? He took something. Just like take the battery out of the. Oh yeah, it was awesome. But so this is awesome.
Yeah, we're really good at like circumnavigating a topic and then slowly getting back to it, touching on it, and then coming back out again and talking about something else. And then
so
back.
You brought notes, right?
Mel brought notes.
I brought some notes on the articles.
Which which article and what notes did you bring? Because I'm all about it.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought they were really interesting.
It's okay. You can. The listener should hear the pages turning. It makes us sound very official.
Drop page.
Exactly.
So right. So you sent 2 articles by Glenn Lowry.
Yeah.
And so I read those. And the first one was from January 2015, called "Ferguson Won't Change Anything." Ferguson won't change anything. What will? Right?
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting. And the second one was from November of 2015, and it was called "The Political Inefficacy of Saying Black Lives Matter."
Yeah.
And so I thought they were interesting. You know, I think I could totally see where people get confused about kind of what's in the middle and where, you know, one of the things that he's talking about is these dualisms, right, in the Black Lives Matter movement, and kind of, you know, it becomes pigs versus thugs, or, you know, it becomes, was Mike Brown a gentle giant or a public menace, and these kinds of like dualisms and the way that we think about these things, and we, you know, assert just kind of things that we have emotionally at stake, and just so that we can be right with our emotions, or so that we can make kind of a law, or a, you know, this is how it is. And so anyway, so I thought it's interesting because, you know, I think to some extent lots of people do that. I probably do that a good amount. And what he's saying is, you know, well, we have to kind of talk about the gray inside of this, and we have to talk about the really messy things, right? Like the, you know, what's at stake, what institutionally is going on here that makes it seem that Black people are being targeted by police officers, and actually in, you know, many cases are being targeted by police officers.
Yeah, well, that's why I sent you the, did you see the statistics? Had you seen that before?
So I hadn't seen that. So then
Really?
I hadn't read about it. And so the
I'd have sent that to you way sooner if I'd known you had. No, seriously.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Shows a bias in the use of force, but not in shootings. Which I think is interesting. I think, you know, I mean, it's one. First of all, I guess what I wanted to say about that is, like, you know, if that can be more fully, if that kind of work can be done again and again and shown again and again that's true, that there's not a bias in police shootings, then that's amazing. Like, there's nothing wrong with that statement. In fact, that's quite a relief, right? Yeah. For everyone, for the people who are in Black Lives Matter, and for everyone else.
But what I wanted to say about that was that as far as I recall, what the article does not say is that police are not required to report the ethnicity of the person they shoot. So there aren't really actually good statistics on how many Black people versus how many white people.
Depends on the department. Yeah, because it was 10 departments. Yeah,
nobody's required. Departments can do it if they want to do it.
Yeah,
but nobody's required. So that, I think, also throws a little monkey wrench into the works, because, you know, we don't actually know. But I'm sorry, you continue.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting. I just wanted to point this out. It's interesting that you point that out, because I agree with that. But I think you actually spoke to it in the beginning of what you were saying, is that the problem is that is wonderful information to know. And if we can broaden that, if you can broaden the data set, so we can include, but 10 large American cities is a pretty impressive data set to filter through. You know what I mean? Like some people were trying to say, oh, it's only 10 cities. I'm like, no, those are 10 major U.S. cities across, and they're also across different regions, because people also don't realize that the regional differences matter. Right. So when you look at 10 different police forces, which speaks to what you were talking to, Jess, who are not, because we don't have a national police force. So you have regional differences, and then you have localities which have different rules and different reporting rights. So there's a lot of variables that come into that, and when you distill it down, gives more validity to it. But those 10 cities are dispersed across the United States. I mean, you're talking Houston, Miami, Chicago, New York, LA. I mean, you're going East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. So you're getting a pretty good cross section of American culture when it comes to urban culture, and you're seeing similar trends. But I think the problem we run into, and this is when you said, speaking about the article, thugs versus pigs, is identity politics. And the problem what I worry about is when it comes to, okay, so it's, the evidence bears out that the likelihood of being shot is actually lesser. Well, right? If that bears out to be true. Now, this very, effective but untrue statement, hands up, don't shoot, which goes back to the Michael Brown thing. And he talked about that too. Let's do away with that. Let's have the honest conversation. Let's not use sound bites and stuff like that to grab attention, because the evidence says, no, that's not true. The investigations in Ferguson, 2 independent investigations, one by the Department of Justice, proved that wasn't true, that claim. So let's not use that, because that's counterproductive. It gets in the way, and the idea of all lives matter. Yeah, okay, it's given. So let's talk about the Black Lives Matter portion of it. Let's talk about that subset, because that was always a problem with it. And actually, I know a guy who's multi-ethnic too, and his thing was, it would be better if it was Black Lives Matter too, because then no one can. Right, yeah, sure. And then people are like, oh well, it's implied. I'm like, no, but once you spell it out, no, you don't. You get rid of the wiggle room. So now you've painted people into the corner, because when you throw that two on there, you're not discounting. Whereas if you just say Black Lives Matter, people always say, what about everybody else? And then you have to go into a long diatribe and long discussion, and you kind of get lost in it. But I found that to be interesting too. But the other interesting data in there is that it does bear out that they're handled inappropriately and unfairly in the different levels. And that has to be acknowledged, because what I saw on both sides of this was both sides would glob onto the statistics that mattered and reinforce their argument without discussing the other part of it. And it's like, no, you don't get to do that. You have to discuss it all. And you have to own the shit that doesn't reinforce your beliefs. And that's the only way you can fucking evolve. So fuck you, address it and deal with it. Like, no, like that's my thing, right? Like, that's what I want to say to people.
Yeah, right. It's like, take the study for what it is, and, but I mean, you can also kind of, there were some parts of the, in the article that you gave me, you gave us 2 articles talking about that study. And in one of the articles, I wrote down this quote. They said, an ideal study would look at how police officers respond to identical situations involving black and white suspects. But of course, that's impossible. In other words, we don't, these partially went off of police reports, and every situation was not identical. So then it becomes a question of, well, when is a black person threatening, and how does that look different than when a white person is threatening for these police officers? And I think that, these kinds of questions are actually where we would actually be able to answer questions. And a study like this is really interesting, but, I don't think people can equivocally say, or, unequivocally say that, that now we know that police don't show bias when they're shooting.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to be really accurate in your speech. You have to say the evidence that we currently have available to us suggests this. It's counter to the it's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive to the commonly held belief by most people. So we need to dig into it more. Absolutely. But that's me. I like accuracy in language. I really do, especially when you're dealing with really difficult stuff, because, and it's not to be antiseptic or anything like that. It's to say, hey, I get it. Yes, we're all emotionally attached to different points of view, but let's explore deeper. Let's dig into this a little bit beyond just the emotional rhetoric. that you almost always see happening. Let's in that process, let's own our shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and one thing I would love to do, this is like, and I talked about this with K-Rock, I want to get away from talking about the black community, the thin blue line. I want to stop this kind of fucking, these identifications. I want us to talk about our communities and our police forces. And I want to start, that's me. Like, and people are like, oh, it's going to, I'm like, yeah, just because that right there, in my opinion, goes to the heart of what the I Have a Dream speech is. The idea is the running theme through that is not a world where my children can be identified by the color of their skin, but by the merit of what they do. Like that right there, you know?
I want to stop you because while I agree with the sentiment to some degree, I personally don't see a single thing wrong with identifying people by the color of their skin. What I see wrong is using that identification to, you know, have a bias or to shoot or to beat up or to whatever. Like, there's nothing wrong with quote unquote seeing color, you know.
I'm not trying to say that.
The black community, I know, but I know. But like, even with, you know, this black community, white community type thing, I think that's okay. I actually think it's okay, but I still think that, you know, I mean, would I love to have in our community? Absolutely. But economically, that is not, you know, we know that black people don't make as much money as white people as a whole, not as individuals. You know, we know that they tend to live in more economically depressed areas. We know that their schools are worse. So it's hard to
relegated to specific circumstances that do group them, you know, into a
and that's exactly what
community.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I want to fight against. Like, I want to say, okay, so that's what I'm saying is it's not the poor. It's not the black. It's not women. Those are people. They're our people.
Right.
And we need to work towards somehow cracking the code, continue to move forward in a civil rights sense, right? Like in a social, like he said in that article, it's not a racial justice. It's a social justice thing. So these things that we need to address in a social context and make people more socially aware and accepting of, I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your sexual orientation as far as who you want to fuck is. I don't care about any of that. And that's hard to do. My problem with the identification of black and white community is it actually reinforces segregation in a mindset. Like it allows it. And I'm like, no, you don't get to do that. It's not like, for me, it's like, no, it's not. If we're going to move to this idea of a global culture, more connected and more understanding, we have to move past those. Yes, for like recognition, it's a physical trait. Like Jess has tattoos and she's a little bit darker than I am.
Right.
But not like, oh no, I define her in my mind as she's multiracial. Because if we're going to be honest, if we're going to talk about our fucking DNA, we're one race, number one.
Right.
And that's another thing. I don't even want to get into the whole, like, I have such a fucking problem with our continual attachment to the idea of race. It's such a fucking dividing eugenics crock of shit.
Too bad Brian's not here.
I don't know, seriously, like and unfortunately, religious beliefs reinforce this stuff.
Absolutely.
So how about, no, fuck you. How about evolution exists? Right. And how about we all came out of Africa? And chances are we all come out of a small, probably somewhere between 2,000 to 5,000 Homo sapien group that survived a cataclysmic event somewhere around 70,000 years ago in the southern tip of Africa.
Yeah.
They survived. They were a big enough group for population, for breeding purposes. And with the rest of us, and those of us who came out of Africa are more alike than those who stayed.
Now, have you read the book, The New Jim Crow?
No.
Neither have I, and neither has Mel, but it's been on our reading list. So my suggestion is, it's not going to be until this coming summer because Mel's got a huge load, but I think we should have a reading group.
Fuck yeah. Oh yeah.
That'd be really fun, actually. Talk about that.
Hell yeah.
I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to derail that. I'm sorry. I just didn't mean to hijack that at all.
I mean, we have so many ideas, but I've been really cool. I've been meaning to ask you about that, and I think
fuck yeah, all day long. I got a book for you too.
Okay.
Yeah, called The Vegetarian Myth.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's awesome. Leah Keith is phenomenal. Her and I, she's probably politically more aligned with your mom than her and I are.
And what is her myth? What is the? And I know, I know you want to go back to this.
We're going to go back to this. It's not her myth. She she grew up, became vegetarian, went hardcore vegan, and then tried doing everything right. I mean, she was growing her own stuff, and she tells her own tale and how she came back to it, saying, "Listen, deconstructs all the different reasons to be vegetarian or vegan, and she's like, it's not
any
right.
of them compassion? Because that's
Yes.
my only reason for being vegetarian.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why I always say it's a personal choice because.
But she does a great job of actually taking that on and saying, listen, this is what you want to think and feel, but it's not right. You're falling short in this like whole idea of life, because what you're doing is you're not accounting for the fact that plants are life. And like, but she even gets deeper into it, and she also gets into the whole idea of life feeds life and everything like that. It's beautiful. And she's now living with lifelong health consequences. She went so hardcore all the way down to like so hardcore vegan and trying to be as literally as minimally intrusive in the world and life of others as she could, that she drove herself to sickness.
Level 5.
But to read this thing, it's amazing, and she does a fantastic job. And a lot of the things she talks about as far as how we should eat and all that stuff. A little while later, I read another book called 1491, which was written by Charles Mann, who's a professor up at Amherst, which is pre-contact America. A lot of the theories, kind of fringe stuff that's in that about pre-Columbian South America. And there's some really interesting theories about the rainforest actually being cultivated forests. They don't grow naturally.
Well, anything that was touched by humans.
Well,
at any point it has to be. There's really no such thing as nature.
Sure, but this is even to a more extent that there's actually like potentially a loss. Well, because you have these patches in the rainforest, which are
natives have set up, right?
Yeah, and he kind of talks about it more. But anyways, when I read 1491, some of the stuff he talked about reinforced her theories, and they're completely separate topics. Right. And he was talking about something else completely different. When I read it, I was like, interesting. This is awesome. So it's like the fun.
It's such a personal choice.
Sure.
Like for me, yeah, that's true. Plants are living. It's not about necessarily for me about killing a plant I'm not going to kill an animal, but it's a sentience. I think has a lot to do with it. Number one, I don't believe plants are sentient. If they are, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I was going to tell you there's some really disturbing newer evidence coming out. That's the sad thing.
We could also boil it down to factory farming versus.
And that I agree with. I agree with you 100% in that score. But I would even take it a step further, because unfortunately, because you have factory farming you have factory farming on the meat side, but factory farming on the agro side, which is just so destructive in that sense. And they slaughter small animals and fowl and stuff like that left and right. So there's almost no way to escape it unless you grow yourself. But
that's all kind of my question is always kind of what's is it
where's your line?
Well, no, actually, for me, it's become, is it better to be, eating healthy and food that you find healthy, that, not, because I'm a vegetarian also, and that isn't meat, or is it better to eat locally? Right. And I think that you really can do that either or, and I think that a lot of times it's just better to eat locally.
Sure.
And as a and
seasonally and locally.
Seasonally and locally.
Yeah.
Right? Seasonally and locally. And we all have our, whatever, we all do things that that hurt the environment, of course. And so as a vegetarian, in the wintertime, am I going to be eating locally? Well, no, because I'm not going to be getting my meat from, the local farm. It means that I want to get, my fat and my protein from an avocado that comes from Mexico or from, or something like that. And so there are all these really
till that wall goes up.
Yeah, it is.
Then they're just gonna have to throw the avocados over.
We're gonna have tacos with hot dogs in them.
We're not gonna have tacos. You can't have tacos. There's no. It's just Tex. There's no more Mex in it. It's just Tex. Tex wall. This is Tex. It all used to be Tex-Mex. Now it's Tex wall. What? You're not America? It's Tex wall.
Okay. Damn it. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you about this, which is what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
This is so fantastically fun.
No, I love it. And so so going back to kind of what we were talking about this article that shows, that there's bias in police use of force, but not in shootings, and all of this other stuff with Black Lives Matter. And one of the things that you had mentioned was identity politics, and kind of how that your I guess your identity and therefore your emotions play a role in how you conduct your politics, right? Is that kind of the idea of identity politics?
Well, yeah, like identity politics is this is what I identify as, and this is my position, and this is and there's not and it's not so
because as people of like at least for me, I don't know how you feel about this. You know, my identity shifts at all times.
Yeah,
sure.
Wherever I am,
Absolutely.
and I think most people of color. Actually, their identity is shifting.
Well, the funny thing is, I think most people are like that. I think anyone anyone who moves through the world, although it might be subtle, is different. Because I'll tell you what, when I was in Japan, I sure as fuck knew I wasn't Japanese.
Right.
When I'm in Europe, if we go to Europe, the three of us, they're going to pick us up as Americans.
Absolutely.
They're not going to see two
they love
women
me in London, by the way. I don't know what it was. I was like Marilyn Monroe in London. I'm not,
really?
yeah. But, sorry. It's just such a good memory. Such a good memory.
I've heard that I would be very popular in like Colombia if I ever went.
Right.
I heard if I ever went to South America, I would be very popular.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, you know, so these are things to think about. I don't know who kind of writes about identity politics, but it just seems to me that to say that, you know, I mean, of course you can have a positionality, but if that's always changing depending on what's going on, then why can't we accept that that position in that moment is actually someone's true experience, you know? So I have a little bit of an issue with identity politics because I think it stabilizes something that actually is never stable, right? Like nobody, but, you know, I don't know. That's
I think identity politics would more speak to the, yes, everyone's somewhat fluid in every one situation, but you're always going to find like someone who's a right to lifer is almost always going to be a right to lifer, no matter the situation, no matter the setting. If they're adamantly opposed to abortion, no matter what, you have that goddamn baby. I don't care. That's funny how you go into
this. Under identity politics?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be something that is it's something that does define you. I am like I'm a vegetarian. Okay. These are the things that define you, that you have helped build your personality upon, like how you perceive yourself, and you're strongly attached to it. So these are kind of those things that are common across, no matter what class. Like your friends would describe you as, you know.
But are identity politics always bad? Because, for instance,
no, I don't think so.
My boyfriend is a twin. And one of the first things that he told me on our very first date, after he said, "Tell me about yourself," and I said, "No, you tell me about you," the first thing he said was, "I'm a twin." Well, to me, that's identity politics. He is a twin that is very strongly makes up who he is and his worldview. You know, his brother is always some way or another part of him, even when they're not together. And I would call that identity politics.
Sure. I think identity politics aren't a bad thing, so long as you're not so attached to that identity that you're stunted. If you're not willing to examine that, how does it play into the way I view things? Is it rational, or is it just an emotional attachment to the way I feel about something? I think that's where it kind of goes wrong. If you can do that intellectual hard work and examine it and weigh it, and sometimes people be like, listen, this is just how I feel. I've examined it. I know it's not rational. I know the evidence doesn't support it, but this is how I feel. Right. Like that kind of honesty, I'm like, all right, cool.
Trump supporter? Is that what you're trying to
Yeah. Bernie supporter too.
Bernie supporter too. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I think Mel is right about one thing, and that is that, you know, when I was growing up, and I grew up over in Hungry Hill, right, over near Liberty Street and in Springfield, and, you know, that area that at that time was really mostly the Irish neighborhood, and our family is Irish, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's your mom's last name, Connor, you know, so we are Irish.
When you hear Grandma Davison's story, you're like, I tell people all the time, like, listen, my great-grandmother was Irish in America,
right,
when you were better off being black.
Right, exactly.
And they're like, what? I'm like, oh, yeah, trust me. And she was a woman.
Right.
And she raised 2 daughters through the Depression alone. Trust me. I was like, yeah, I was like, trust me. I come from like solid stock.
Right, exactly. and that's so for me, I was Irish. and nobody else, no other Irish kid wanted me to believe me to be Irish. But I was raised culturally Irish. I was Irish. But when I got older, and then when I tried to find myself, and my father's name was Robert Del Rio, and then I was Spanish. And when I was in high school, all my friends were Puerto Rican, and I didn't speak Spanish. But if you were to ask me, I'm Spanish. And then as an adult, when I finally realized, oh, this is who I am, then the next thing I decided was, no, this is what I would call myself at the time. I would say I'm biracial. And I was very involved with the movement, actually, to have a biracial checkbox on the census, because at that time you could choose one, black, white. I don't even think there was
not even
other.
Hispanic.
There was Hispanic, but I mean, you couldn't choose.
I wish I could just
I'm
check
black,
other
I'm
and write
white.
human.
Right. Exactly.
I've always wanted to do that.
Well, I think there are a lot of people who do that.
Who are doing that now.
Human.
A lot of people of color do that.
Yes,
I've talked to a lot of people of color who write in human.
Yeah, I agree.
I love that.
And so for me, then for a while I was biracial, and now, interestingly, I say I'm black. And every now and then, and that's usually to save time, and also because some people aren't smart and they don't even understand what biracial is, and I don't feel like explaining it, so I'll say I'm black. Or I'll say, which is what I learned from Mel, actually, I'll say, oh, my father's white, and my father's black, and my mother's white. If I'm asked, but as a person, as an identity right now, in 2016, I'm a black woman. And that may change again, as it's changed 3 times.
I'd say you're more like 1 or 2 creams.
Yeah, a few creams.
Yeah,
right?
you're like 2 creamers.
Yeah,
you're definitely not
3.
black. Maybe 2 or 3. Yeah, 2 or 3
My
creamers.
boyfriend the other day said I was. What did he say? He said his coffee tasted like me. He said it's creamy. It's
bitter?
light. It's slightly bitter, and I asked if it had sarcasm. Is your coffee sarcastic?
So actually talking about kind of color and, well, you're not black, or you are, or how you relate, it's funny, the other day, I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but I said, gosh, I wish I could remember. Oh, I know. I was at my local bar. And
sorry.
So I've created kind of, you probably know this because you're on Facebook with me, but are we friends on Facebook?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
So I have this like wino persona on Facebook that is not actually real, but
she likes her wine.
People tend to, including my mother, get on my case about me being at bars or drinking wine and then posting pictures on Facebook. That's what.
If you're at bars drinking wine, I want to know what the fuck kind of bars you're going to.
Actually, I don't.
I think that's technically a lounge.
Yeah.
I think if you can have wine, it's
Captain Seaweed.
Yeah, it's
That's
not.
the name of her bar.
It's owned by like local, like old school sailors from Providence.
If it's Captain Seaweed, there should be 2 choices. You can have ale.
Yeah.
Or you can have rum.
Yeah, exactly. They have like their own Captain Seaweed tap, and it's like a mystery beer.
My ale is warm. It's ale.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
So anyway, I was talking with one of the bartenders about this because we got into we were talking about a little bit of this stuff, and and we started to talk about. I think we were talking about black people, and he's very old school and a working class, and he says, you don't understand, like, black people think they have it hard, but the thing is, like, they don't know what hard is because my family was Polish, and we came and, and it was really hard for us, and my mom had to, learn English. She didn't have a choice, and, like, Hispanics don't know how that is. They come and they can still speak Spanish, and so we were kind of talking about these things and talking it out.
Does he not see your face, by the way?
Right.
I mean, your skin color, your hair.
Right, so I figure, this dude doesn't realize, he's saying all this. I don't know if he's trying to, maybe... And I don't mean this negatively, but bait me into talking, giving a negative response, or if he thinks I'm going to agree with him. But
thinks he's talking to an Italian girl or some shit.
Yeah.
Probably thinks. Yeah, I mean.
Right.
Yeah, you could pass for any Southern European.
Jewish.
I could really travel anywhere. No,
no, there's some places you couldn't. You would stand out like a sore thumb in Northern Europe.
Right. Or
in Ireland. In Japan.
China,
Japan. Japan, you'd probably be a big hit.
Yeah. She would.
Japan, you'd be a big hit.
Yeah, it's still true.
Well, anyway, so so I'm talking to him, and I said at one point, I said, well, and for me, I was talking about kind of this mixture, how you relate to different people at different times, and how your identity changes. And I said, for me, you look at me, and I would be. I'm a white person, right? Like I'm not a black person. I'm a white person. And he went, "You're not white." He just very nicely smiled. "You're not white, honey. Like, why would you think that?"
Right.
And so you never know how people are really taking you in when you're a person of color, and that's why your identity is. So at that moment when he said, "You're not white," to me, I was not white anymore. For me, in that moment. I was going to present myself as a white person, as somebody who grew up in a very Irish-based culture, Irish-American culture. And then I wasn't, because he just said, well, no, that's just not true. And, and so then I had to kind of, well, you're right. I don't actually consider myself white. That's true. And so, okay, if I'm going to be real with you, and then kind of get into it. But I guess what I mean is that, your identity changes based on what other people think of you too.
Oh, sure.
And I think
And can I
huge...
actually ask you to relate the story of when you were doing summer stock in North Dakota, when you...
And I was hired to do summer stock as a slave in the Midwest.
But tell
They
about
wanted
when
me
you
to be
called.
a black slave.
Yeah, but talk about when you called them for after the when you talked to your teacher in college, and he said you have to call this person and just tell them you're going to take the job. Do you even remember? Because I remember this so clearly.
I don't remember.
What was your teacher's name? Do you remember your theater teacher?
Yeah, but I don't want to share it.
Oh yeah, that's true. But she called to talk to the guy who was going to be directing the play in South Dakota, and he said, I'm just going to make up a name. I'm going to say George, and he said, okay, I'm glad to hear from you. Now, George tells me that you're a light-skinned black.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I remember that very clearly.
That's right. Yeah, I do remember that. And, and then on the other side of that, right, I was talking with some groups of students the other day, and I was actually talking about my theater experience to them, and talking about it's kind of difficult sometimes if you're auditioning and you look like me. They don't know if you're auditioning for something where they have, people who they have like, I don't know how to explain this. It maybe antebellum shows or something like that,
Yeah.
And so they need to put you in the black or the white. And when I audition, often that gets very confusing. And even though I've done a very good audition, I won't get cast because they don't know. They don't know if I could look white on stage, and they don't know if I could look black on stage, and they worry. And so they just they put me in the no pile, right? So I was talking about this, and I said, but that's nothing compared to people who are really black. And what I meant by that is, their skin is very dark. And the person stopped me. I was talking to two black men, and they said, well, hold on a second. You say really black, but you're black too. You can't, of course you're black. You might be light skinned, but you're black too. And that's your experience is just as acceptable. And so again, like you position yourself as something, and as a person of color, especially, kind of an ambiguous, I'm kind of ambiguously a person of color.
Right.
You never know where people are going to take it, and they kind of negate your position, or they'll, and they change your reality for you right away. And you realize that you have to go about life kind of based on the reality of other people, because that's the only way actually you're going to be able to move and,
how to maneuver
through, right? Yeah. So I'm telling you all this because I think it's interesting, this thing about identity politics, and, let's stop talking about the thin blue line community, or let's stop talking about the black community. And I think I don't think you're going to disagree with me. I think it's so on both sides, on both far sides of the spectrum, it gets reflective, because if one person doesn't do it, then the other person can't. Right?
Yeah.
So we can task the Black Lives Matter community to stop talking about black lives and start kind of incorporating other people into their politics, which they could do even without changing their name, right? But until the other side of it is also willing to say, yeah, there's racism, and yeah, you guys are black, but let's stop talking about this, and let's stop looking at it like that, and racism stops, then nothing is going to change, right? The black community is still going to see themselves as an imagined black community, because that's how they are being scene. And I just think it you know, I guess when I hear things like, you know, like let's stop talking about the Black community, or let's stop talking about the thin blue line community. Well, it's a community because somebody has othered them into that community, right? Well, I think that's really I don't know.
I think yes and no. I think someone else has, but I think they also have. I think people want to belong.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
You know what I mean? So there is that people other them in, but then people just crave belonging. Right. You know, we're social creatures, and we work in small bands and stuff like that. So I think, you know, there's a saying that all politics is local. And that can kind of be applied across a lot of lines, you know? So what is your community? What's your locale? What do you know, where do you define or draw the lines? Are you from Springfield or are you from Winchester Square? Or are you from Forest Park? Are you from Forest Park or are you from West Alvord?
Right.
At what point am I from West Alvord or am I from 44 West Alvord? The second floor.
But actually,
interestingly,
you know, I was just talking about this earlier today. I lived in several places in Springfield, but as a teenager, I was in Forest Park. And the South End were the Italians. And that's where the Italians were. I mean, there were a few Italians that weren't, but most of the Italians were. And if you wanted to go to see the Italian festival and watch them climb the grease pole, you went to the South End. And eventually the Puerto Ricans were in the North End, and the Black people were in Winchester Square. And, you know, it is a lot more mixed. And that is what you identified as. Where are you from? Forest Park. You know, is how we...
You know what wave of immigrants I never saw coming to Springfield?
Laotians?
Yeah.
How did I know? Yeah.
So strange.
Yeah, it's true.
So strange.
I remember when they came to, actually, because there were two girls in my class and I just couldn't stop looking at them because they were so beautiful. And I just, like, everything about them. I remember I was in, like, 10th grade and I just stared at them. Like, they must have hated me, but I couldn't stop looking at them.
Even in a regional sense, right? It makes sense for an Asian migration to the West Coast.
Right.
So Hispanic migration on the East Coast makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. Just in strictly, purely migratory type things, it makes sense. But when I was younger, when you're just a little older than me, actually it's like we almost go right in between each other. You're 9 years older than me, and I'm 12 years older than you. But that's interesting. You know, what's the city in
Lynn?
Not Lynn. No, it's in it's north central eastern Mass.
Lowell.
I was going to say Lowell.
Lowell has had a huge Asian population for a long time. Like when I was in high school, the dominant gangs in Lowell were Asian gangs.
Absolutely.
Cambodian,
Yeah.
Yep.
Huge Cambodian.
Yep. Very true.
But it was such an anomaly. It was so anomalous. Like Lowell was this real weird standout in the Northeast, with the exception of like Chinatown in New York City.
Right. And
other than that, in Boston.
Did that come out of all the warring?
It came out of Vietnam.
The Vietnam.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but such a crazy thing. Yeah, and I never saw. So when I drive, when I'm like in the X,
which are the X is just like all Vietnamese now. Yeah.
Yeah, like when I'm in the X and I see a bunch of Vietnamese, I'm like, this is so weird.
It is. And you know, I mean, I don't live in Springfield anymore, thank God. But, you know, it is really different how it's really changed now in terms of, because I think now, I can't believe I'm saying this is horrible, but I think now the Puerto Ricans are South and North End.
They are.
Black people are still, and poor people, really poor people, Winchester Square.
Yep, Winchester Square is still dominant.
Or Mason Square, they call it now, right?
Yep.
So Mason Square and 16 Acres actually is kind of the bougie black people. You know, it has been an interesting kind of.
And 16 Acres still likes to call himself 16 Acres.
16
and you're like, shut
Acres
the fuck up. It's Springfield.
You're Springfield.
You're a neighborhood of Springfield. Get over yourself.
Exactly.
Stop it.
It's so true. So true.
Jesus fucking Christ.
But,
I wish that identification in the neighborhood would just die. Accept it. You're in Springfield.
16 Acres. What was the other? Is it 60? There was another one right next to Ludlow. What is that? They also call themselves something else besides.
Well, there's also Feeding Hills and Agawam.
Yeah, Feeding Hills.
No, you're Agawam.
Right.
Shut up.
Right. You know, I had this conversation about identity politics with my boyfriend because when I listen to you actually sound a lot alike. He's younger than you are. But
He has time to grow into his awesomeness.
Yeah, he has time to grow into his awesomeness. But we were talking about identity politics in terms of homosexuality, actually. And I think I would say this is probably true, and this is kind of what Melody was saying also, which is that maybe you don't have identity politics. Like I said, maybe gay people just wanted to never call themselves gay, and they just wanted to live with their lover and get married and, hold hands in public, and they couldn't suddenly, or not suddenly, but it was wrong to do that, so-called. And so then they have to create an identity and fight for that identity.
Yeah.
And that identity is I'm gay and I'm out and I'm, and deal with it. And they have to do that because they,
Do you consider that part of the civil rights movement?
I don't know.
I do.
Yeah, sure, Stonewall.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's. I would say it's its own kind of.
But it's an outgrowth, and yeah,
It's the next
see that.
wave.
And it's-
I see
and
it as
it's-
part of it.
And I mean, I guess right. I guess I'm already historicizing it, but that's true. The things that are going on now too,
Yeah.
of course, are civil rights issues.
Feminism was part of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all part of it. And I think, again, but that's the reason I asked that is because, and the reason you paused, is because quite often the civil rights movement is identified with blacks, the black community.
And I did. Yeah, I thought about that.
And so, like, here are these things, right? Here are these interesting things that they're so subversive and they're just so entrenched.
Yeah.
And these like the things I'm trying to better understand in my own life. That's why I come across Professor Lowry, and that's why I read the Black Lives Matter page, and I kind of data mined it. And I'm trying to read it and understand it. I think it's useful in in a personal identification, like the formation of your personal identity. I agree with, but I think people should strive to live an examined life. And I heard a great saying recently, which was starve the ego and feed the soul. And I think identity politics is safe and secure, and it gives us a sense of security and belonging. So it's actually ego. And it gets in the way of our soul. So when you hug a person, that's your soul. Like that's like when it's genuine.
Right.
And everything else is gone. And when you hug someone, it's just a person. It's affection. So like I kind of try and that's kind of this idea that I'm trying to apply to my life now is to lead an examined life, and I'm trying to starve the ego and feed the soul. And when I have these conversations, I'm trying to kind of understand an emotional intellect sense, but also balance it with the intelligence sense to find out where we or those I interact with are making missteps, or we've been misled, even possibly. We've been conditioned in certain ways. And I do believe it's conditioning. At the end of the day, and if you listen to the thing with K-Rock, or if you listen to the other ones, so two of my biggest historical heroes, I love Che Guevara, which is people like, really? Yes. Love Che Guevara, and I love Malcolm X. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Martin Luther King. I have his letters from an Alabama jail over there. Printed them off. I've read them before. I read them in the Montgomery airport one time. I happened to be there for a 50th anniversary, and they were just beautiful. And to this day, written word and grasped English language, few ever approached what he could do with it. But Malcolm X said in the last analysis, it's a class analysis. And I think that's the one thing you can find historically among humans is its class identification. And it's class warfare, or at least classism, though the haves and the have-nots. And it doesn't matter the color of your skin. In the grand scheme of it.
But in reality, though, it happens that that black people make up a large amount of certain classes. So you have,
But
I
if
mean, there
you can
has
get
to
into-
be an integration there of.
And also,
the throw to that, what the counter to that is, and although that's a perception, but again, if we look at objective data, if you see some things that are anomalous, but then you see a lot of them, then chances are you're not looking at the data objectively. So if I show you an Oprah Winfrey, who's a multi-billionaire, and she's a female.
Yeah, but famous people are exceptions of the rule in general.
Now, see what you're trying to do is you're trying to quantify around it. You're trying to say it's an exception of the rule. She struggled. She made her way.
No, that's true. She did. It
Tyler
doesn't mean
Perry,
that she didn't struggle.
Tyler Perry, Even Clarence Thomas. People want to call Clarence Thomas an Uncle Tom. And that's another thing that came up in that. But so this use of disparaging terms against people who go against their identified communities or communities that identify them, so then they outcast them. These things disrupt this narrative that we've been taught and we understand, and we've in some cases, and rightly so, we've experienced. So experience reinforces a lot of what we've been taught, and it makes it harder to better step away and see the forest for the trees.
Well,
So why aren't
you
there
go.
more Oprah Winfreys?
Right. That's what I was going to say. So
How many billionaires are there?
Right, but how many billionaires are there
But
that
how
are
many
black?
billionaires are there? Yeah.
I don't know the number on that.
So my point is that, or my feeling about that is that, while I do believe that class is a huge part of it, income.
I totally agree with that
I
too, but-
completely agree with that. But more black people are poor than white people. I believe, we'd have to check to be sure, but they just statistically speaking, black people don't do as well economically as white people do.
I think there's an odd statistic out there that this is just an odd statistic that statistically speaking, the largest number of people that draw WIC who are on welfare
those are
programs
white people.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
There's no doubt about
definitely,
that.
yeah.
But that's because also a lot of poor whites are in the country, and they're that's.
But like there's
more-
lots of metrics to look at to get to that. So again, it
to
goes
describe
goes,
what poor is.
and it goes back to the perception, right? So if the perception is cops shoot black people, young black men more than anyone else, but the data is suggestive that that's not the truth.
Well,
yes,
let
they're
me-
more physically rough, but they're not. So I'm saying like that's where the data becomes really important. And it forces us to kind of look at our perceptions.
I'm not going to deny that data is important, but I think where I'm going with this, besides the fact that I do believe that black people are, I'd have to look it up to be sure, but
I'd agree with you.
That
I'll
they
say that.
don't
Disproportionately
make,
are
they did
poor,
more
yes.
so that's where the class issue breaks down a tiny little bit. But also, rich black people can still be discriminated against.
Sure.
And that, I think, also breaks down the kind of, it's only about classism and not racism, because you can be, what's his name from Cambridge, the professor there, who was arrested for breaking into his house. Or he wasn't breaking into his house, but somebody
was
saw
arrested
him
for breaking into a house, but it turned out that he was just getting into his
he was
own
walking
house.
into his own house.
Yeah.
Skip gates. So it breaks down further when, you can be rich, but you're still black. And
I think there's also so that's actually an interesting. It's interesting you bring that up because there's like so much to that. Like when people talk about these incidences, they're not necessarily. It's hard to actually take it in the totality of it. And then once you look at the totality of it and you take in both sides, you're like, holy shit, there's mistakes made up and down. Like there's mistakes made across the board here. There were perceptions that came in. So the initial police report, the initial call that went into 911 is there was a black gentleman breaking into a home. So
and I'm just giving one example, and he's the one that came to mind.
Yeah, but I was going to say, so, and you're absolutely right. So the cops show up. And now here's the interesting thing. So the cops show up and there's obviously already perceptions in their minds, right? Black male breaking into a home in Cambridge.
Right.
So all of a sudden, they're walking into it looking through a lens already. He, as a black man, having grown up in America, had probably had bad run-ins with the cops for nothing more than being black.
Right.
So immediately, when they show up, he's on the offensive also.
Completely
he's
offensive.
offended.
Absolutely.
And he's offensive.
Yep.
And things just go sideways from there.
Yeah, I remember seeing a picture,
like,
actually. I remember.
I saw that as a total, exactly how you described it.
Same
When that
so
happened,
did I.
It was
So
like
did I.
Just a total series of misunderstandings.
Yeah,
that were
a series of
started off
unfortunate
by
events.
And the picture I
racist
recall,
call.
I
Yeah.
recall very well seeing this picture of him on the porch. And the look on his face, and his arms were kind of halfway up. And I remember knowing when I saw that picture, this man is feeling the frustration of other racist incidents that he has to deal with that are now culminating with, I am trying to get into my house and someone would say I'm breaking in, and that frustration boiling over to you racist cop, which it probably was not.
In his case, here I just walked up to my door expecting to walk just in.
Right.
I forget my keys. I'm such a fucking idiot.
Right.
I'm pissed off. I got shit going on.
Right.
And I got to fucking clamber through a goddamn window. So now you're already pissed off at yourself.
Right.
But then also like all that internal, like, you stupid motherfucker.
Right.
You're, that self-talk and that self-beratement. All of a sudden someone walks in the door and you're like, are you out here? You're already fucking
You're
triggered.
already
You're
pissed
there.
off. And
then it just spirals. And then they show up and they're like, well, we're possibly walking into a confrontation.
Right.
And then holy shit, it's confrontational.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my God, this is such a fucking
like
shit show.
That whole thing, that's exactly what I was going to say. That whole thing was a shit show, but that's simply one example. I mean, you know, I was even thinking about, this was actually the first time that I had thought about it in this way. And this was like 20 years. Well, all right. I wasn't actually going to say this, but I'm going to say this. And then I'll go back to the original thing. So Mel, when she was a baby, had this, I had bought her these cassettes of Disney songs. And one of them was, I'm a policeman dressed in blue. And, you know, I can't remember the words except that he would say, you know, I'm a policeman dressed in blue. These are the things I like to do. And, you know, and he'd say all these things. And my mother, political activist that she is, we were in the kitchen and that song came on and he said, I'm a policeman dressed in blue. Here are the things I like to do. And my mom went, beat up people whose skin is black. Like, just, and this is 28 years ago. My daughter was, you know, 26 years ago. And I was like, oh, Mom, you know, cut it out, Mom.
Yeah.
But then, shortly after that, I remember hearing about this case of a police officer who was shot by other police officers that he actually went to the academy with because they were chasing a perp and he was plainclothes and he was chasing the perp and the cops saw a black man and they shot him. And, you know, and yet they went to the academy with this guy. Phone call.
Keep going.
Okay. No problem.
First time.
You know, they went to the academy with him. You'd think they would know him. But in the heat of battle, so to speak, what do they see? They see a black man in plain clothes running, shoot him. And so that's when I started to realize, oh, wait a minute. Actually, there is something to this kind of implicit bias that we all have. I'm not saying we don't.
Absolutely.
Right.
We all have it.
Well,
I think the implicit bias thing is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask, because I didn't catch kind of the final. So we were talking about, you know, that the issue is more of the issue, you know, that the injustices that take place, you know, are happening because this is actually going back to Malcolm X, right? More of a class issue, and also a kind of a structural issue with the way our economy works.
Yeah. So
do you
it's
agree
important.
with that? Or?
So yes.
Okay.
Economic. Yes. There's an economic component to it, but in like a really distilled thing is where I go. It's in the last analysis, it's a class analysis. And when I bring up the Oprah Winfrey thing, and there are others. So if there are people of quote unquote, and I hate the term because it is socially, it's determined based upon where you are, and it can be a fluid thing also, like a minority. If a minority can get there, then our perception is not quite true.
I see.
We're missing the mark a little bit. And if we're going to really address this problem, we can't be missing the mark.
Okay.
We
now
need
that
to
makes
get,
sense.
We need to get really, really close in on it. So I have another thing that I've recently come up with. I call it the Baltimore data, which makes it weird. So when we talk about, and someone actually, Erica, texted me or sent me a message on Facebook. She was listening to the K-Rock one too. Yep. And she had this interesting question about racism. And I said, well, it depends on what type of racism you're talking about. And I was going to ask you this, and we can kind of end here if how much time you guys have?
We're about at it, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 7:30 almost.
Okay. So
it's just been so fun. Like, we honestly didn't think
Could
that.
do this for another 3 hours.
I know.
Yeah, well, that's what.
Wow, are we going to really do that for 3 hours? How are we going to talk about race for 3 hours? And now we're both like,
no
how
problem.
can we stop talking about this?
Yeah, I really wish you didn't have to go.
I do too.
This could go for a long time, but we'll pick it up more. But this is kind of the thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
you wanted to ask us. I think I know what's coming, but go ahead.
No. Well, you might not. So Erica asked me this kind of broad question, and I've always found it interesting. People use the catch-all term racism, but there's different types. There's different types of racism, and quite often people move fluidly through these different ones in one conversation. They don't even realize that they're actually talking about different issues altogether. And there's different ways of that when we define them differently, we're going to define progress in different ways. And that's important because this is kind of when we're really kind of getting into the weeds and separating it, right? And this is how we have to measure progress because people want to say, and I have friends who are black, and every time something happens, and sometimes, and to their credit, they're not just like every time something happens, like they're still hammering something's fucking wrong, but they're really attached to it. And it's, again, their personal experience too, right?
Right.
Which I have other black friends who have very different personal experiences. So theirs is different. But a lot of times and they don't know it because they haven't necessarily been taught the theories and stuff like that are behind it, because a lot of this is the academic stuff. Individual racism, group racism, and then institutional racism.
Right.
Structural
But then-
racism. And
Well,
all of those.
I'm
kind of-
careful when I say structural because that I say institutional, talking about the actual
I
organizations,
understand, yeah,
right?
sure,
But because-
organizational.
So when you said economic,
Right.
there's a separation there. Some people have a tendency when they talk about our society to talk about us as a capitalist society. No, capitalism happens to be our form of economic endeavor. It's how we move and how we exchange goods and services and stuff like that and move money.
Right.
But it is separate from our form of government.
I'm not so sure about that anymore.
Well, no, they are still separate. There is a relationship.
Yeah.
A
right.
marriage, one
But
might
they,
say.
Right.
But
they function.
We,
Right, they
our
can
government,
function.
our system of government was formed during an agrarian society, and we
Right.
grew into a capitalist society in the Industrial Revolution. Like, these things are important. So, like, this kind of nuance is the level that I like to, like, talk about it and dissect it to. And people are like, well, no. And I'm like, no, you have to.
You have to.
Because this is how we're going to measure progress and evolution, which is really important in the overall discussion, too. But my question is, and maybe, what do you think my question could be?
I think your question is going to be whether or not you think black people can be racist.
Whether
or not I think black people can be racist.
I was going to ask you if you think anyone can be racist.
So my boyfriend and I get into this a lot. And so here is my studied answer, and I've thought about this a lot.
Oh.
Let's stick with the United States because
Okay.
that's the culture that I know.
So are we going to talk about people, though?
We're going to talk about people, but
Okay.
the reason I'm sticking to the United States is because when I generally say this, he says, "What about in Africa? What about in China? What about
absolutely.
I
No,
can't
I'm
talk about
talking-
a culture I don't understand,
Sure.
or
Yep.
don't know." So in the United States, I believe people can be prejudiced. Absolutely. Anybody can be prejudiced. In fact, I love, if you've never heard it, Chris Rock's Cracker Ass Cracker. Is his stand-up Cracker Ass Cracker.
Oh, I gotta hear it.
So funny. And basically that's what he talks about, is how a white man talks to his father about something and his father answers him back very politely, and then as soon as the guy leaves, he's like, "That cracker ass cracker," you know. So is that prejudice? Absolutely. Is that racist? Absolutely not. That's what I believe. I believe now, can we switch it up a little bit? Can we have a microcosm where, let's say, for some reason, there's an all-black school, a middle school, in a historically black section of town, and there's one white kid, and the teachers are mean to that white kid, and the principal is, and he gets bad grades because he's white. Well, then that's probably racism but but I have to look at it as a societal thing.
So that's the sociological argument.
Yes.
And that's the application. So what that is that's taking institutional racism and applying it down to the individual level.
Correct.
And I think, this is my belief, I'd re-examine that. I think that argument is a God of the gaps kind of argument. Because the question is going to become, what's the point of change? What's the tipping point? What are you going to use as your metric to identify change? Because, and where are you going to separate the locality? Because Baltimore is a black mayor, mostly black police force with a black police chief.
Which is
mostly-
why that's institutional racism and
Hold
why
on.
everything gets
So
caught up.
so is Atlanta.
Right.
So you're going to run into these problems, which if it was only one, it would be an anomaly. But more than one is data that suggests your theory is flawed and incorrect. It's like when people cling to their God and they're like, well, we don't know everything. Yeah, but science in the past 300 years has answered a lot of the questions that at one time were relegated to God.
But
so it's a
what
God
do
of the
you-
gaps thing. So I think it has to be. I think that's why I said, are we talking about people?
But Atlanta's a city in Georgia, and Georgia's a city in the United States, and the United States, right? Georgia's a state in the United States, and the United States has a system of institutional racism.
But yes and no. So the question becomes, and I mean this seriously, you have a black congressional caucus within Congress. You have black people who are senators, who are House, state, or who are representatives in Congress. You have now a first family who was black for 8 years, who won the election.
And haven't, but racism is, in my opinion, worse because of that.
I don't think so.
I think it's brought out the worst in people.
We're having the conversation now, and I think that clearly was a tipping point to start having some of these.
I would agree with that.
I think the conversations
really
come back up. I think
yeah.
it's challenged. I think it has challenged the perception that that it was no longer an issue. But I think so in a power sense. In a representative's power sense, when people talk about institutional racism, that's kind of my question. At what point? So what's the threshold of representation based upon skin color that no longer makes it so? And there becomes all these difficult layers. And we can talk, and I'm totally cool with talking about it in layers. I think absolutely people should. I think it has to be like that kind of nuance.
Right.
And I think there has to be a concession that if we have a black president, we've come a fucking long way.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
We've made such...
Are people not conceding that? Like, have people said...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, people are like,
I think people have said race relations are as bad now as they were in the 60s.
Which is completely
And I've heard people
stupid.
from the 60s who have said, fuck you, that is
it's
absolutely not true.
Completely asinine and stupid.
But that probably has more to do with the, this is a totally different conversation, but the victimization culture that we live in right now.
Yeah. Sense of entitlement. Yeah, it's an entitlement victimized culture. Completely agree.
But and I'll finish with this, and then I know Mel wants to finish something. But what I would say is where we begin is exactly where we're beginning, right here at this table. And I truly believe that that racism and solving the problem of racism is a white person problem, not a black person problem. And I think what it's going to take is more white people like you who can listen and talk and not be defensive, because when anybody talks about race and ethnicity, there is a sense of defensiveness, and to break through that defensiveness first and just talk until there, again, like what I said at the beginning which is that you just start from the beginning, you start from a point that you can both agree on, and then you work from there. But I really believe that racism is a white person problem that white people have to work on. So, I wish you had more fucking time, because I would so take you to task for that. But I'm going to say this, because I'm not saying that. So emotionally, I think that's absolutely valid. But I'm going to turn it around and say, people like me, absolutely right. But here's the thing: in that discussion, because I'm like the prototypical, if you think of the man, I'm like what comes to mind. Right. I'm a big white dude who looks like I'm straight out of fucking Central Casting for a Midwest fucking corn-fed white dude. You are absolutely right. Yeah, right? Absolutely. So what on the other side? Which is why I love your brain, by the way, because your brain is so amazingly different than your appearance. It's like the biggest breath of fresh air. You have no idea, by the way. But here's the thing. When I come to the table, people have to be able to see past that. And they can't, when I bring up a point or I counter argue, they can't say you don't understand because you're a white man. You can't do that. If you're going to say it's my problem, then you can't negate my counter arguments or my discussion points. Okay. So here's the thing, right? If that's the claim, theoretically then I should be able to have this conversation with another white man right across the table. Yes. And it's, see how you say no? And that's exactly it. Because if it's not valid. Right. It doesn't carry the weight of validity. Right. If I have a black dude across the table, somewhat valid. If I have a black woman across the table, more valid. If I have two women who are of mixed ethnicity, more valid. If I could get a woman of mixed ethnicity across the table who's a lesbian quadriplegic, who's a lesbian quadriplegic and has had babies, right? Yes. Who's had little person babies, right? I have had the most valid fucking conversation on earth. That's real.
And no one could ever say it. So that kind of becomes my thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a white person problem.
I need
think
to
it's
remember.
It has to
I think
be.
it's an everybody
I
problem.
need to
has to
remember
be
a movie, and I will
integrated,
send it to you. If you're going to find it, you're going to find it on VHS. I cannot remember the
Or
name
YouTube.
of the movie. Or the parts of it are on YouTube. I cannot remember the name
Or
of
from
the
a
movie,
friend.
but it was a group of white men and black men together at a retreat. And it gets raw. You know, it gets really raw because it starts out with one white man claiming, oh, I'm not racist and I'm not, you know, and I've had it just as hard. And one black man getting up and being absolutely infuriated at that statement and really having a hard time physically controlling himself because he's so angry at a statement like that. And how over 2 days they really come to an amazing understanding. This entire group of men who leave completely changed. I do not remember the name of that movie, but I will find it and point you towards it because that's the conversations those are the conversations that need to happen.
Yeah.
But maybe what I mean by it's a white person problem is that white people need to start the conversation.
Well, I'll say one thing. You know, when you at one point said, you know, we have to stop talking about the black community and the thin blue line. What I thought in my mind was like, that is true. And then I thought, except most of the time when people say that, and I don't mean you, and I didn't think it was specifically what you meant, but I thought most of the time when people say we have to stop talking about the black community, what they mean is, well, Black Lives Matter needs to start talking about, you know, everyone and not just black people, right? And I don't know. I think, in other words, I think a lot of times it gets pushed back to people of color. And then I think people of color tend to say things like, you know, well, this is not our problem. This is your problem because you guys are the racist people, you know, or whatever. But, and so I see that, you know, that side of things, but it's absolutely true that it's, you know, I totally agree with you.
You're right. Two white men
men
cannot have the conversation we had tonight.
Right.
Two white men could talk about
it.
What
Sure.
can we do to be allies?
Yeah.
What can we do to...
Right. There are some productive
conversations
ways.
that white men could have amongst themselves.
No.
Well,
No,
you're
I
a
mean
white
that.
man. I wouldn't know, actually.
No, the reason I say no is because then and here's the problems, right? Now it's, white man's going to come and solve our problems.
Right.
Like there's always these
But there are
traps.
and also all of this history behind
Exactly.
you know, white men
Paternalism
taking things
and
into their own hands.
how very colonial of you. I'm like, what the fuck?
It's ugly, isn't it, man?
So
Yeah, that is true.
Is that your pump?
Yeah, sorry.
Like people say these things, but
Yeah,
then when you
that's
kind of
good.
go, well, what about this and what about that? Like, fuck. And that's when you start to realize, holy shit, I have all these preconceived notions that make these things difficult to kind of overcome. And that's what I want. I want people to stop deflecting and start internalizing and saying, okay, where am I so attached to my identity that's actually blocking me a little bit and doesn't allow me to hear it? Because every person has their own struggles. And relatively speaking, there's an equality to them. And we have to understand them and we have to appreciate them. And as soon as we discount someone else's attempt to relate, we're blocking them. And they're going to shut down a little bit more. And they're going to pull back a little bit more. And it's harder to pull them back in.
Damn, I hate that we have to end this. I agree.
Sorry, I'm beeping.
You are
okay.
beeping. I do agree. Actually, let's end it. I agree with that. I do agree with that, and I think we all have our problems. What I would love to end with is an agreement that we all read the new Jim Crow in the spring and then come back and have another talk.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to sit down again before then and talk some more about it. And I think this is an awesome beginning point. And Mel's got a bunch of notes.
This is how I
that
think
she took. No, that's
visually,
fantastic. That's
so-
fantastic.
Yeah,
so
that's fantastic.
What I would like to do is I'd like to go a step further. Yeah, I'm all about the Jim Crow, but I'd like us to kind of start exchanging stuff we come across.
Yeah, that's
in
I'm
that
good with
Facebook
that.
thing.
That's cool.
And I wanted to share this with you. So this is a philosophy that came to me, and it means the world to me. It's a South African proverb, and it's Ubuntu, and it means I am because we are. It is the single most beautiful philosophy I've ever come across.
I
And
love
it's
that,
it's
actually.
literally just that. Ubuntu. And it's really, really, really poignant that it comes from South Africa.
Yeah, really.
Because that's where, evolutionarily speaking, we all came from. From this small band that survived this global cataclysm, most likely, and then the rest of us flowed out of Africa from there.
I am
so
because
I'm always,
we are.
I'm always bothered by when people say, well, they use like they kind of separate Africa, and I'm like, dude, that's all of ours ancestral home, and people need to start identifying that and understanding that and seeing ourselves as one tribe. Like that's my belief, and I'm trying to kind of, so I hate to say it like in an expanded consciousness kind of way, because I'm not trying to be all like earthy crunchy, but I mean that. Like that's kind of how I approach everything, and I totally get what you're saying. Absolutely. Like, you know, I say and you're right, do away with the thin blue line or do away with the idea of black community. Really, what does that mean? Historically speaking, hey boy, sit down, shut up. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how that comes across. And I'm the first one. I'll be the first one to be like, to stand up to someone who tones like that and be like, hey, motherfucker, you might want to take a seat or you're going to end up bloody.
Yeah.
Like at a heartbeat. Because I got friends of all colors. And I've got friends of all colors and all sexual preferences. And I'd be the first one to lay my life down to defend them. I just don't give a shit. It's not that I'm colorblind. I appreciate diversity, but I also think that we're all one band.
I think that's the danger of, you know, that kind of thesis that you have, which is so meaningful. But then the danger is that it can just be so easily kind of pulled back into, you know, well, there's no such thing as color, and you know,
but there is.
You know, difference doesn't matter, and so let's not talk about it anymore, right? So it's interesting to break it down this far because, you know, I mean, hopefully when in 50 years hearing the term colorblind won't be the kind of the dagger that it is, you know,
yeah, just like lofty upper west side.
That's what Stephen Colbert used to say, right? When he would do his, I don't see color. We used to love that. I don't see color, so I mean, I'm told he's black, but I don't know.
Well, I really do appreciate you guys coming to sit down and talk.
Yeah, we really
Seriously,
do.
this was really awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
And like next time, we're gonna dig into like Christopher Columbus and all that shit.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna dig into way more stuff because it's just so cool.
It is cool. We're gonna get my boyfriend in on this, who is actually a history teacher.
Yeah, well, that'll be fantastic. Because next time I'll have I'll have the other mic set up and I'll have a fourth one. So if there's four of us, we'll each have our own mic and we'll go round robin like this, and I'll have two more stools like those.
Awesome.
So it'll be even more comfortable, and we'll put aside a good afternoon. I don't care if it goes 6 hours. I don't give a shit. No, seriously.
No, it's
These
good.
are the kinds of things
we'll
that
order
have
pizza
to happen.
and we'll just, we'll eat and talk.
Extra meat?
Oh, absolutely, of course.
All right, thank you guys.
I'll tell you about
you.
the time I ate chicken in Brazil. Another time, though. Not
Ooh,
now. That's a
I've
little
come
cliffhanger.
across recently. I was introduced to. I think it's what the hell is it? It's like an Argentinian barbecue style of chicken.
Sure, yeah.
It's like pollo.
Yeah, pollo.
Pollo.
I'm trying to remember. It's called something pollo. Well, in Portuguese, it's na brasa, but I think it's just brasa in pollo brasa or something like that in Spanish.
It's like pollo. Oh my!
Yeah, it's like a grilled, barbecue chicken.
Yeah, the way they holy fucking shit! I experienced it for the first time. Yeah, I think it was either Peruvian or it was one of the South American countries. I don't know. They're all the same.
All right. Well,
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you, love.
Yeah.
Ta-da! There you go. Like I said, awesome episode. I hope all of you found it as enthralling as I did. I mean, I was the whole time. It was just this awesome back and forth, and it went so many places I didn't expect it to go earlier on. I thought we'd get into the race in America earlier on, but that will follow in the next episode. The next time we sit down. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. I hope you all take something away from it, enjoyed it, and we'll see you next episode on Muzzle Punch.